Hey everyone, Ian here, popping in with a brief intro to the very special podcast you're about to watch. Last week, I attended the Chicago premiere of a fantastic new documentary that's streaming now on Amazon Prime. It's called John Candy, I Like Me, and it was directed by Colin Hanks. It's a beautiful, sprawling life and career retrospective of John Candy, the legendary comedian and film star who passed away way too early, 1994. This is as fine a tribute as you're likely to find to any performer, any human being, actually. But yeah, there was a special show at the Chicago Theater, and several of Earth's Mightiest Critics were in attendance. So sometimes they're very hard to get into a room for a recording. So this episode's a bit different. I conducted 3 separate segments with Don, Cati, and David to get their opinions on the film and also to tackle different aspects of the documentary. So we're going to get kind of Don's overview of the movie, talk to Cati about the presentation at the Chicago Theater, which involved Ryan Reynolds, Chris Candy, and also Jim Belushi. And then rounding things out with David, talking about how this stacks up to other kind of celebrity documentaries and what kind of a renaissance we're going through with celebrity documentaries, as evidenced by the Mr. Rogers film from a few years ago and the Christopher Reeve documentary from last year, which embarrassingly I have not seen. So David kind of walks me through his thoughts on that and gives me some recommendations. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode. If you do like this episode, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, all that business. Be sure and support all of Earth's Mightiest Critics. Their information is down below. And definitely check out John Candy, I Like Me. It's streaming now on Amazon Prime. And also be sure to support St. Jude Children's Hospital. The tour that the film has been going on, all over the place. All the proceeds from the merch and the ticket sales go to St. Jude's for children's research. It's a fantastic cause, and I'll leave a link to them down below as well. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the conversations. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care. John Candy, I Like Me, directed by Colin Hanks. Yes, that Colin Hanks.
Orange County.
Yep. It is one of the best films I've seen in probably 10 years. It's way up there.
Yeah.
And to see it on a big screen, it was at the Chicago Theater downtown, and there was assembled press for a big event because they showed the movie, and then they had a panel with Ryan Reynolds, Jim Belushi, and Chris Candy.
Chris Candy, his son, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And Kevin McCarthy was our moderator I think he's an LA-based critic, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I did not recognize him, although he had some fans in the audience. But I kept thinking of the actor who passed away, who was in Body Snatchers and UHF. But it was one of those weird situations where I should have been on top of the world getting able to see these people talk about their film. But after this movie was over, I just wanted to go home and hug my family and do something creative and fun. But I sat for an hour through the Q&A, which was delightful in some respects. Yeah.
I was impressed how much Chris Candy really led into and gave the best anecdotes, because it's very easy with Chetty Cathy Ryan Reynolds to just get it absorbed by the stardom that's sitting there, because it's Ryan Reynolds. And then Belushi can kind of be Belushi, where he's gonna not necessarily overdo anything he's gonna do, but he's just a little up there in years. He's probably not completely scripted with what he wants to say, whereas these guys have been doing this tour since Toronto, so they know what they want to hit. But then Belushi comes in with the curveballs, and can they still get him over the plate that they can hit him? But it was a fine Q&A, a nice experience. I appreciated everything that his son spoke about the most, because that's when you knew when Ryan was talking, it's great because it's something funny and anecdotal. But then when Chris was saying something, you would feel yourself leaning in your chair, all right, hold on, something's coming right here. That kind of thing. He's going to give us one more nugget and one more thing. So that was nice,
Yes, and it was, as much as I'm also old, and it was Sunday night and I was tired and all that. But it was a nice companion piece to a documentary, which is, it's a loving tribute to a comedic actor who I did not realize he was only 43 when he passed away.
Only 43.
Yeah. He died in 94, just shy of his 44th birthday, it turns out. And the documentary begins with kind of the end of his life, the funeral, the eulogy, and then it rewinds. There's a whole great like VHS tape aesthetic to it,
Yeah.
going all the way back to 1950 and kind of marching through the eras of his life, leading back up to the end, which is kind of
Hmm.
strange. And in the middle, there's all sorts of testimonials from family and famous friends and people that he
Yeah.
knew and loved and influenced. It is one of the most complete depictions of a life, regardless of if
Yeah.
it's a famous person that I've seen. And just it made me want to know more about all of my friends and family, like to
Hmm.
have that level of detail. And it's also a very moving story. What
Hmm.
did you make of it? Am I just way out of proportion here or
No,
what?
no. I think I'm letterboxed at 4, but I could write myself into a 5 to 9. I'm still writing my review. Kind of the crux I thought of about was, um, it's obviously by rewinding the way they do, they kind of do this. It's not your typical career retrospective documentary either, because like they don't like chapterize and touch on every single movie and along the way. It's like they will mix in. It's almost like the movies are anecdotal examples to just how the man led his life. And I admired that so much because it'd be so easy just to get up there and play the greatest hits. Like, hey, let's go back behind the scenes of Planes and Trains Automobiles. Let's go behind the scenes of Uncle Buck. And they do that, but they do it in a way to describe the man where he was and just how he lived in those time periods and in those pieces where I was really impressed by that because maybe a year ago we saw the Christopher Reeve one. And I felt like the Christopher Reeve one did about the same thing where you could spend all day on Superman if you want to, but you can show the man how he lived around that, where the film stuff is just the icing on the cake a little bit. Even the Fred Rogers one years ago, which was amazing. That's to me, that's one of the best films in the last 10 years is Won't You Be My Neighbor? And where same thing, like you could just play greatest hits of his show and just hit the clips, but you don't. You have all these people speaking on what they were like away most of the time from their stuff. So what I took away from it was I was so happy to get such a measure of the person versus again a greatest hits just rundown. I'm writing my review and the quote that's sticking in my head, it's something that's been used to death probably in other places, but Maya Angelou says, like, when you die, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I get that a lot as like people in the teaching community over here with me, they put that a lot of times, like the kid's not going to remember their homework, they're not going to remember the assignment you gave them, but they're going to remember as you as a teacher when they are old and gray and you are old and gray or in the ground, they'll remember, hey, remember my 5th grade teacher, he was a really nice guy. Like they will remember how you made them feel. So we get preached that a lot as in the education community, and I felt like I got that about out of John Goodman, or sorry, out of John Candy, I Like Me. But the weird thing is, like, he is so special of who he is, where you have all three. We remember his lines and his quotes and his delivery, and we're reemphasized by that in the film. And then we of course are still championing his films and his memorable stuff in the what he did department. And even after that, we get more of what he did with like the Toronto community, the theater community, the football stuff on the side. Like we got that too. And then of course he makes us feel, because like it's John Candy, and to our generation that man might as well be Santa Claus. So like it's so cool that when you get that Maya Angelou quote, you get all three with him, and the movie gives you all three, and it's kind of really special in that way.
I agree. I'm curious
Hmm.
what, and you said you might revise up to a 5. And
Yeah, I might.
I'm not saying there's any perfect
Yeah,
movie, and we kind of talk about
right.
relativity of scales, but what is there that from an initial assessment kind of holding you
Mhm.
back? Was there something that you felt could have been done better or was missing?
Yeah, maybe, and I this is really getting like picky, but I'm not normally the picky person, which is fine. We're gonna write it up to a 5. Maybe maybe it was oversold by, I didn't see a trailer, but maybe it's even oversold by Reynolds. Is like, hey, we got Bill Murray, and like Bill Murray gives you a little something, but not a lot, and you kind of like, he's your bookend. He opens the film, he closes the film. Like he's your biggest word, the biggest the perspective you want the most. And if there's a nitpick thing, there's just not enough Bill Murray, and maybe not enough Dan Aykroyd too. I know those were the impossible gets that Reynolds talks about in the post Q&A of the two guys he had the hardest time getting. He had to conduct the interviews himself, which is incredibly impressive. But at the same time, like, not to say that Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy don't give you multitudes of things about the man, but maybe at some point you want that extra luster, from Dan and Bill. So, yeah, maybe that's maybe where I'm falling short, just the shade, or just you know, the ramifications of his death. Like, you get there quickly. I mean, you open with the eulogy, you close you open with Aykroyd's eulogy, you close with O'Hara's eulogy, and you're kind of just wrapped up and done. Like, we close the 405 Fever and the credits end. So maybe it's an abrupt-ish ending, but I'm okay with that. And like I said, I think I'm gonna make my way back. So yeah, I'm
It's
still mulling over. I got to type. Yeah.
well, you reminded me of something,
Hmm.
and I think it's weird because that's all meta contextual stuff because most of the
Sure.
people watching this will not have been at one of these, special screenings, but now
Right.
that it's in our head, we can't stop thinking about it.
Right.
So when Reynolds kind of teased it on stage, he was like, "Now the two people that were the hardest to get were the ones
Hmm.
that had the most impact in this documentary." And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
"Wait, Macaulay Culkin and Catherine O'Hara were the hardest to get?" And
I
then he
know.
says, "It was Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd." I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I that's
It's
more
Macaulay
of
and
like
Catherine. Yeah,
that's like
for
that's
sure.
like comedy geek catnip. Like, oh my
Hmm.
God, you got Murray and Aykroyd to be in it.
Yeah.
But when you look at what they contributed,
Hmm.
they're just kind of doing their
Yeah.
own bit. There's nothing as
Sure.
insightful or personal as what we get
No.
with Catherine O'Hara and Macaulay Culkin, which I
Yeah.
mean, Culkin, I think, aside
Culkin's
from
amazing.
Chris Candy, kind of
Yeah.
steals the show here, and you
Hmm.
really get insights into what it was like to be a child actor and the
Hmm.
child of a major movie star.
Yeah.
And that's the if Aykroyd and Murray, if they had not been gotten for this documentary, I don't think it would have been any
No.
weaker. I don't think it would have been
Yeah.
stronger. They just would have been like there are a
Yeah.
couple other notable people that don't appear in it that were in Candy's orbit,
Hmm.
Jim Belushi, namely.
Right.
Um, but it's a strange thing. I feel like those
Who they got was good. Like, the SCTV roots are strong. So when you can get Levy and you can get O'Hara and you can get a little bit of Dave Thomas, which was nice to see. Like,
yeah.
I know Rick Moranis doesn't do this stuff anymore, and that's fine, but but yeah, they like those three, especially Eugene Levy, who it can hold a room. Like, you could have done the whole documentary with just Eugene Levy talking, you're probably okay. But to get O'Hara and all that, like, it helps a ton.
Well,
You're
and
right. When I
also
think about it
sorry.
in the sum of things, you probably don't. It's nice that you have it, but it's not essential to have Murray and Aykroyd
I
for
mean,
how little you got them.
well, but one of the things I think is great about this documentary in particular is, and I think you kind of touched on it. We do get
Hmm.
it's the greatest hits, but there's also other movies that are kind of discussed.
Yeah.
But a lot of documentaries will do kind of like quick hits of everyone who's going to be in the movie at the beginning, and then you kind of come
Mm-hmm.
back to them or they bounce around. There's a
Yeah.
little bit of that in here, but a
A
lot of
little.
it is sequential with some nice surprises. Like Macaulay
Hmm.
Culkin shows up for the Uncle Buck portion, and then Don Lake, who's a
That
character actor that
seals the
people
ending.
don't
Yeah.
yeah, they don't know who he is by
No.
name, but you'll know
Hmm.
him when you see him. He's been in a
Yeah.
lot of stuff, and he talks about John Candy's death, and he has trouble keeping it together, and it
Hmm.
is one of the most affecting parts of the film, and it comes at the
Absolutely.
very end.
Yeah.
And so I love that there are these great surprises, almost like you're scripting out a
Hmm.
movie and not putting together a documentary of existing footage.
Yeah.
Like, if this were a fictional feature about someone who never existed, it would
Hmm.
still be narratively
Oh
perfect.
yeah. That's the thing is, I don't feel like, as much as I'm like, oh, they kind of rush it at the end, but Don Lake holds it and it helps. Um, and yeah, any longer and you maybe have too many greatest hits, or you overstay the moment a little bit, because it comes in just clocked under 2 hours, and that's about all you really need. And anything longer than that's a little more exhausting or a little bit more over informative. But um I'm not one of those expectations people were like, oh gosh, I really need to see the JFK chapter. Like, I didn't need to, like, I didn't have a checklist going into it, like, I need this or I need that. I think they hit the things they wanted to hit really well. And it's been a trend the last probably 20 years. Like, we the people who were making documentaries about are part of a generation that has had some kind of like home video, person recording, phones in our pockets at this point, where, like, I remember the Amy Winehouse documentary a few years
I
ago,
was just gonna
Amy,
say that. I love that
where
movie, yeah.
where everything, there's no talking heads, it's all footage of their life. It's well edited and well stitched together with the background people talking that you don't need to have talking heads for. Now luckily this is a a group of comedians where you want the delivery, you want the facial expression, so I wasn't mad about couches and talking heads. But the MVP of every documentary is still the editor, and the editor here to layer like the flashbacks of a father in a smart little moment, or the flashbacks of this in a smart little moment. Like they cue it and flow it very, very well.
Yeah, and one thing, I mean, I love John Candy, grew up on his movies, but
Mhm.
have not seen all of his
Oh,
filmography,
same here.
and
No,
it
I
occurred
haven't
to
yet.
me watching it, I've never seen SCTV, but they
Yeah.
have the SCTV portion in here. I
Hmm.
mean, the audience
Sizable.
was in stitches. They had,
Hmm.
was it, Yellow Belly, the
Yeah.
cowboy? That
Yeah.
skit was phenomenal and brought the house down.
Hmm.
Probably for people who'd seen it and didn't even know it existed like I did.
You're
But
right.
yeah, I'm gonna definitely seek out SCTV, and I think folks should definitely seek out this documentary. It's almost too good a gift to the world that this is on Prime, because like everyone's got Amazon, but you don't have to.
Hmm.
You don't. On the one hand, you don't get to experience it with an audience. On the other
Right.
hand, there's no barrier to entry except an Amazon
Yeah.
subscription.
No, I think, and you heard it from our moderators at the thing, like, before McCarthy came out before the film, he's like, this is like most things, it sounds like nowadays, there's no phones and no stuff like that. Like if it was a stand-up comedy show, you're doing the same thing. Chances are you're bagging your phone before you can get in the theater.
Right.
So, no, to have a communal experience in a movie with comedy, of course, because it's a comedian first of all, above all, you do get to, because there's enough clips and there's enough even anecdotes to go with the clips, you are laughing as if you're watching a comedic fictional narrative film. So you get that roller coaster, or you get that hug and snuggle at the same time as you get the informative part that's just washing over you wonderfully. So it plays well.
Yep. And also the other thing that I noticed was a lot of it was genuine laughter. I mean, there are comedies
Hmm.
today that don't have a tenth of the
Oh,
hit
I know.
ratio of these old.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to romanticize Candy's career. Like
Hmm.
he made Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but
Yeah.
he also made Armed and Dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never saw Wagons East.
Hmm.
I think because that was the last thing he did, and I was kind of considered to be a cursed film. But I also heard that it wasn't that good, but maybe
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and revisit. Did you ever watch it?
No, if I did, it was a long time ago where I would have been, 15. I was probably past me where like John Candy's not funny anymore. Like, he's funny when I was 11 when it was Home Alone, and that kind of thing, where I think that's probably why Culkin works the best for us, is he's our proxy. He's mid 40s just like us, where
Yeah.
we were those kids watching Candy, because most of his films were not the squeaky clean variety, but close enough that we could sit in front of him. He didn't make any completely tawdry, massive, messy films. We were along for the ride. Great Outdoors has its lowbrow humor, but it was like you can still put a family in front of Great Outdoors and have all that fun. So,
Oh yeah, especially the
mhm.
the kind of surrogate father scene that we get in that
Oh,
that this movie puts into a completely different context. It's lovely, and I'll let other folks discover it. That's
mhm.
the great thing about this is we're not spoiling any like major, I
Not
guess,
at all.
plot details. But
No,
even if we told you everything that happens in the movie, there's nothing to come close to experiencing it.
true.
Especially if you can watch it with a loved one or a family member that you cherish. I think this really helps put things in perspective and helps us appreciate someone who by all accounts lived their life with that kind of perspective
Hmm.
of like I'm doing this to support the people I love and
Hmm.
sometimes support other people to my detriment because he took
Yeah.
on the weight of the world, no pun intended.
Hmm. Hmm. No,
But
good. This is yeah, high recommend. Hollywood has been in different, and the funny thing is, it's just different sources have been the last. There's tends to be one dynamite, and maybe it's our romanticism with Hollywood, but like the Michael J. Fox one's really good, the Christopher Reeve one's really good, the Fred Rogers one is really good, the Amy Winehouse one is good. We're living in a high time of very good documentaries, and it helps that places like Amazon still show them and make them. Netflix has been a huge curator of documentaries for a long time, or at least a big supporter, where they'll bankroll them and get them on their streaming service. It might not get them in a theater, but they'll put eyes on them. So we're living in a good time, and this is a great place to just I this is the kind of documentary where I even think like I know Ron Reynolds is more the cusser on the couch and things like that, but like I could put this documentary in front of my children to be like, hey, remember that one part in Uncle Buck or that one guy in Home Alone, and I can introduce them to, hey, this guy was the best when this was Will Ferrell for us when we were kids, like that kind of like presence in person, and come over here, let's learn about this man, and obviously there's trials and tribulations to his life, but at the same time, it will make you want to revisit those films, and that's the best part.
I want to get your sense of that presentation at the Chicago Theater, because I was, aside from Chris Candy's presence, his demeanor, his stories, I was very off-put by how, for the lack of a better term, artificial the stage presentation was. I did not realize that this was part of a tour until they really started talking. And then everything kind of clicked into place. I'm like, this is all fake. It's a fake presentation for a real movie. And I was kind of put off by it.
Here's the thing. I did not get that sense when I was there in that presence, mainly because I was just awestruck and, hearing people talk about him and stuff like that. Talk about John, especially his son. I mean, his son was 9, I believe, when he passed and stuff like that. And then Jim Belushi, like, going through all different things. But then, oh, by the way, my post that you're in, the documentary liked, so I got that going for me.
Nice.
Have to shout out the blonde in front on those little things, those little accomplishments. But then when I was looking at, different clips, there's definitely a beat that goes on that's very similar in each city that Ryan Reynolds does. Like, nothing about that is original, I would say. When he talks about, he talks about how he got Bill Murray to do some stuff. He talks about Dan Aykroyd and stuff like that. And they may be a little bit different. Like, we got to hear, the voice note that he gave, that he sent Bill Murray, and those anecdotes and stuff like that. But that seems to be the beat in every city.
Was Belushi, well, real quick, was Belushi part of each of those, or was he just like the Chicago guy? And so it's like a different kind of guest star in the other stops, I'm assuming.
He's a Chicago guy. Like, I believe in LA, they had Macaulay Culkin and maybe Martin Short. I forget who they had in. Oh, they had Rob McElhenney, and I believe in Philadelphia and stuff like that.
Wrexham dude, yeah,
which makes sense. Yeah. That was very interesting too. The things that I didn't know, the fact that he was, John Candy was owner of a Canadian football team, which I was like, oh, well, that's amazing. That's so, coincidental with, Ryan Reynolds and stuff like that. So I can see, Canadian, actor, comedian, all that stuff. Like, they have a lot in common, but there were some aspects of it that I did. I mean, Kevin McCarthy, who's the moderator, does an amazing job. Like, I followed him for years. He's so good at what he does when he talks about different actors and the filming styles and, like, different way. And I feel like he was really wasted on stage. Like, I don't.
You mean his potential, not like he was drunk.
No. Yeah, sorry. It's like, I feel like the opportunity to, ask questions, stuff like that, was, he just was, on the stage. And I know that he is an amazing moderator, and I think he could have done a lot, but he didn't get the opportunity to do stuff. It was basically down to the point where it's like, okay, let's get some questions from the audience and stuff like that, which, I wish I could have heard some questions from Kevin McCarthy, but at the same time, when Belushi was just going on about his experience with John and what an amazing person he was. I mean, they had the clips, so they would set up the clips, and they had it. And it's not like, oh, I think we have that. It's like, oh, surprise. That was one of the first things that really got under my skin, is
you'd have Belushi talking about this extended story about how he was filming Only the Lonely with John Candy in Chicago at the same time he was making Curly Sue, and there's this great story about Catherine O'Hara's trailer,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a really funny story. And then it's like, and then Kevin McCarthy says, and you know what? I think we've got a clip from that movie right up here. There were like 2 or 3 clips they played during this evening, and they all happened to have them coinciding with these anecdotes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this was all rehearsed. This was all fake. Now, they might not have said, hey, this is the exact script you got to go with, but I can easily imagine backstage before they come out, especially if Belushi is just like coming in for this leg of the tour, Reynolds going up to him and saying, hey, you got any anecdotes about Only the Lonely? Because that's one of the clips we want to show.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing with the voicemail to Bill Murray. And then also there's a voicemail with Cynthia Erivo.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, Ryan Reynolds is like, he's telling these stories and like, and you know what? I actually have the recording from when the message I left Bill Murray. And oh, I also have the thing with Cynthia Erivo on my phone. He takes out his iPhone, he sticks a regular microphone up to it, and it plays in perfect sound quality, echoing throughout the Chicago theater. I'm like, that's not how audio works. There's nothing real here.
Yeah, and that was something I like, seeing some clips from some of the other cities. I know that he definitely like went like in detail, described what happened and stuff like that, but I didn't actually hear him like see that he played the actual audio and stuff like that. And you are right, like the fact that it's like, let's put this microphone up to an iPhone and it's going to sound amazing because this is how stuff works, on the fly. It's just crazy. I'm just doing this, like no rehearsal whatsoever. No, we all know that's not how that worked and stuff like that. But it was cute to hear, even if it's not true. And he did change up the lines that it's like, here's my son saying like, do the interview, Bill. It's like, how could you say no to a child? And it's like, but it was cute to hear his kid talk on the phone. I just wish obviously there's going to be some rehearsal because you don't want to just fall flat and, you never know how people like all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, I just froze on stage. I don't know what happened and stuff like that. But I do think there are times that, Chris Candy was hearing some stories. I'm like, okay, I've never heard that about my dad before, so that's a new one.
That's the thing is like I feel like he was the only one. I mean, I assume he's been on some of these legs of the tour as well, but he feels like the only one that wasn't kind of let in on the fact that a lot of these were going to be bits, because he did have some genuine reactions, and it was nice as the 4 of them were leaving the stage, like Belushi kind of like threw his arm around him and gave him like this big like walking hug that didn't seem like, hey, make sure you get this shot, everybody. It felt like a real genuine like long lost uncle type of thing. It was really touching, which made everything else seem unsettling. Like the whole bit, I didn't like the recording that he left for Bill Murray with his son, because I'm like, this is not real. I don't know if this is actually a genuine moment, or if that's even his kid, or if this is all just like recorded or scripted. And it went on for a couple of minutes. I'm like, can we just get back to questions or anecdotes or something? Because I know what this is. I'm not impressed. People seem to be eating it up, but I'm frankly, my blood's boiling.
I ate it up on stage, but then when I saw that it's like, and the reason why it's like, oh my gosh, they're doing this for us. Like we got to see this, and we're the only ones that are going to see this. Like that's so, that's amazing. But then seeing that it's like, oh no, it's, all these other people. Okay. Well, now I don't care. You just
it's
do
like
everybody. Fine. I feel less special, like 1 in a million talk, whatever.
It reminds me of Adventures in Babysitting, where the guy is like, a girl like you comes along once in a lifetime. And Elizabeth Shue says, or twice in the same night. Oh, busted. Oh, man, that was such a good scene. Great movie.
Filmed in Chicago.
Yeah. That movie is going to be 40 years old in 2 years.
I know. It's crazy. Wow. But no, I mean, without some of the stuff, again, I wish there would have been like, more questions to Chris and like, seeing the films. and being with John and like how he's interacted and the relationships that he still has with a lot of his dad's friends and co-stars. And I wish I would have been able to ask my question, which was,
You had a great question, and here I want to close this out. I could talk to you about this movie for hours, but we don't have that kind of time.
I know.
Because you got a plane to catch in a few hours, I think.
I
But,
do.
All right. You had a great question. You revealed it to us as we were walking out of the theater. I want you to tell us what that question is. And I assume you've thought about this. I want your answer to that question.
So
I'm putting you on the
I
spot.
have the question, but honestly, I have not thought about the answer.
All right. Well, then why don't you just put the question out there and we can invite the audience to put their answers down in the comments. Yeah.
So my question is that, John died, which we didn't even talk about this. He died at 43, which that blows my mind that I mean, I don't know why I never connected that when I was, because I mean, I had to sit down when I found out that he died. I remember being in college and being like, wow, that just took my breath away that happened. But in no way, shape, or form did I put 43 as the age. I don't know. I just, for some reason, he just didn't age like in the 20 years that I was aware of him being in films and stuff like that. But my question would have been, after he passed from 94 to till now, I feel like there are so many films that miss, a John Candy in them. And what is a film role or, a role in television that you're like, what, that would have been a really great performance by John Candy if he had a chance to play that role. So that was my question. If they'd, if I had a chance to ask it.
Well, I put you on the spot. I am not going to blame you for not having an answer because I just realized I don't have an answer.
I know.
I thought to ask you, but I didn't think of what my answer would be. So, folks out there, if you have an idea or what would have your John Candy dream role have been if he had, in the alternate timeline where he lived to the ripe old age of 102, what would it be? And I think part of it, for me anyway, was it's a shock to find out that he died at 43 because, I'm 48. I'm 5 years past where he was. But also, he passed away when I was 16. And when I was 16, 43 might as well have been 62.
Mm-hmm.
And even just like looking at him now, it's kind of that whole thing where people a long time ago looked like they were much older than they were. So I still he still looked older than 43 to me. And I don't know if that's just age or perspective or what, but yeah.
I mean, the 80s and 90s weren't necessarily forgiving or maybe complimentary. I mean, the Golden Globes, the Golden Girls were supposed to be in their early 50s and they looked older. And like, I'm in my early 50s and I don't think I look anything like the Golden Girls. I did just think of one though. But I love the person who ended up playing this. So it's like, but it would have been a very interesting to see if he would have played Hagrid in the Harry Potter films.
That popped into my head like a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
But then he wasn't British. And I think that was one of Ryan's stipulations is everyone had to be British. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But yeah, I thought of that too.
Yeah. It's a question that it's like, I just feel like there's a number of things that I'd have to really think about it. But it was just one of those questions like, I wonder what film that it's like, I wish you would have been, in that Zombieland. I think I'm just looking at some of the movies that I have. It's like, what, Zombieland would have been a good one. Possibly I could see him doing something in that, but yeah, he's just an absolutely incredible person and a huge figure in my life growing up. Because I realized too, while I was watching the doc, it's like, what, I may have more films of his in my collection with VHS, DVD, or Blu-ray, possibly, than anyone else. He may be one of those fundamental actors who I have the majority of his films I own in one way or another.
Wow.
And I didn't even realize that until I was like, they were going through like Stripes and Splash and Summer Rental and, all these other, and I'm like, own it, own it, own it. Holy shit.
Well,
And
that's the thing is one of the questions that was asked was how many films had he done? And I don't think there was a definitive answer. There was kind of a guess, but it is weird to think that he hasn't made a movie in 31 years, but up until that, from almost the beginning of his professional career until he passed away, he was in so many movies that became such demarcations for us kids growing up and even into our young adulthood that there is like this giant gap there. But
yeah,
fortunately, we'll always have his movies to go back to. I'm a huge fan of this doc, and I've been telling people it's one of the best things I've seen in 10 years. And they're like, "Oh, have you seen the Christopher Reeves thing and the Fred Rogers thing?" I'm like, "No." So, is not that you want to rank these things, but would you consider this to be kind of in the pantheon, if you want to call it, of those three documentaries? Or are you like, well, if you like this, you got to see these other two because they're going to blow it out of the water?
I mean, I would say it's comparable to those two, of course.
Okay.
I'm not a big ranker or anything like that, but yeah, it's along those lines for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it gets, and I think again, the fact that they got, some of these talking heads that they did get. I mean, Ryan Reynolds had to pursue Bill Murray and Aykroyd relentlessly. And I think it's important that he did because those two guys probably, they did kind of come up with him and they knew him really well. So those are kind of like good, kind of celebrity faces that can somewhat anchor the movie, but then we get everybody else too, like I mentioned, like, friends and family. And so I think that there's a wide variety. I mean, we've got Mel Brooks in here and, it's crazy. Yeah. So this is one of those things where like, I'm sure the footage that Hanks had and Reynolds had that like, there could be so much more, and I'm sure it was hard to edit this, but I think it was clipped together really well.
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of alluded to earlier, it's not just a movie about, by all accounts, a great man. It's also a great movie. And even
Mhm.
if you don't know anything about John Candy, I feel like you could come into this and it's such a complete picture of a life that it could be a fictional feature about someone who didn't exist, but it is about a real man whose work you can go back and discover. The one thing I will say to kind of wrap up is the Murray and Aykroyd thing, and this kind of came up with Don and Katie. I think it's important that they were included because it would have felt incomplete without them.
Sure.
I just don't think they really added much to the documentary, especially in comparison to like Macaulay Culkin, even Don Lake, some of the friends and family. It's just like, oh, cool, it's Bill Murray, and he opens the movie. But in terms of what he says, he kind of keeps riffing on this one anecdote. I'm like, yeah, that's cute, but you're in this documentary for like, I don't even know if he's in it for 10 minutes.
Well,
And Aykroyd's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh, and here's Dan Aykroyd saying something, but it's not really anything that isn't said better by other people that's in the film.
well, a couple of things on that. I was thinking about their inclusion since watching it. I think it's more so of how they were used and where they were placed. So the footage of Murray being interviewed and Aykroyd being interviewed, that's Reynolds interviewing them in person.
Well, yes,
you don't see him,
right. But here's the thing, like, and I'll let you finish your thought, but my question is, there's no like difference in interview style between like we presume
Huh.
Hanks and Reynolds. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you didn't know that, if Ryan Reynolds hadn't mentioned that on stage at the thing we're at, would you have noticed or cared?
No.
Okay.
But I guess what I'm getting at is I think that so the movie opens with a cold interview with Murray, and I think, I mean, it's quiet. There's no music, and it's just Murray kind of like also like kind of like half lit, and kind of like just almost having a conversation with you, the viewer, almost like talking, to you. And it really kind of pulls you in and draws you in, and you think like, oh, he's going to say something funny, or he's going to, what's he going to do? Because Murray's kind of unpredictable. But I think, you know, and then this is in the trailer too, but he basically says that, like, well, it's gonna kind of be hard to talk about this guy because nobody really has any dirt on him, and if anybody does, great. And it's it's kind of a funny way to open it, but I think where that was placed really kind of hooks you as a viewer. And I think also then we go right to the 1994 funeral ceremony in Los Angeles, and as people are kind of heading out after the funeral and going to their, you hear Dan Aykroyd's eulogy, which is a powerful eulogy, and he's a great orator and very articulate, good wordsmith. And I think if you would have just heard Aykroyd and maybe seen Aykroyd clips and stuff, I don't think it would have been enough. It's like, wait, he couldn't show up for this. So I think it was really nice to actually include some interview segments of him, like being interviewed at his home and stuff, and not just hearing his voice or seeing clips.
Well, and that's what I'm kind of getting at. Like, the documentary would have felt vacant if we didn't have an interview with them. It's just you're kind of bringing me around on the Murray opening, but I think he pops up again later in the documentary, and he's still kind of just continuing like a sort of jokey story that he told at the beginning. Like, we don't need this. And the Aykroyd thing, yeah, it's nice that we see him as a talking head because there is all this archival footage and that lovely eulogy that is kind of played for us. But when he shows up, I'm like, was there nothing else that you could talk about here? Like, I felt like we got more with Macaulay Culkin. Like, you could have just had a mini movie about Macaulay Culkin talking about John Candy, and that would have been 3 times as impactful as whatever Aykroyd had to say, because it was sort of generic. Yeah, he was a great guy, and I don't even remember exactly what he talked about. Which there's several other interview subjects in the movie where I could say, oh, that was a great story they told about Aykroyd. It's a nitpick, I admit, but it is one of those things where, yes, the movie would have felt empty, or lacking in some respect if they hadn't had those guys. But seeing what they brought to it, I'm like, I feel like it kind of levels out to a null.
Yeah, it would feel weird without them, regardless. I was actually quite surprised and glad to see certain people that we just don't see anymore, like Andrea Martin and Robin Duke. It's like, whoa, okay, great. It's not that I forgot about all, but I just don't see them anywhere anymore. And it was really cool. And sadly, I forget the guy's name, but his co-star from one of his last movies, Wagons East. I'm like,
wow. Oh, that was Don Lake. Yeah, talking about the end. Yeah,
I was just like, okay, wow. I mean, it just provides some really great context and a reminder of the impact that he had. So yeah, highly recommend. I Like Me.
I love this. Sounds weird. I Like Me, and I'm definitely encouraged to go check out those other docs that I missed that I mentioned. The ones that you mentioned, we really are. It's a wealth of celeb docs, but saying celeb documentaries can be kind of an eye roll to the average person. These sound like movies that really make you care and appreciate a life well lived, or lives.
Yeah, and hopefully it gets people to see other documentaries that maybe aren't celeb focused, but
oh yeah,
but it's sometimes these can be a good gateway.
And that's an excellent point too. Like, you mentioned documentary to someone, like, oh, it's just some kind of like a Civil War, a Vietnam documentary. Yeah, like, I got to do homework. But no, that's an excellent point and a great point to end on. So, David Fowley of Keeping It Real, thank you very much. And you are wrapped, sir. I appreciate you talking about this film with me.
No problem. All right. Well, see you later.
Hey everyone, Ian here. I know, long time no see, but if you like the video you just watched, feel free to subscribe to Kicking the Seat right here, and also check out the playlist and recommended video right here. Thanks for watching.